The morning started like any other on Kepler 442b. Veltar walked through the crystal gardens where his people grew their singing stones. The Thylorians had lived peacefully on this mining colony for over 200 years. They carved beautiful sculptures from the rare metals they found deep in the planet's core. Their art was famous across the galaxy. Veltar was the colony administrator. He took care of the 300,000 Thylorians who called this place home. His blue-scaled skin caught the light from the twin suns as he checked the morning reports on his datapad. Everything seemed normal. That changed when Dr. Kessista burst into his office. "Administrator, the sensors are picking up something terrible," the scientist said. Her voice shook with fear. "3 large objects are moving toward our system. They're coming very fast." Veltar followed her to the observatory. The massive viewing screen showed deep space around their solar system. Dr. Kesta pointed to 3 dots moving across the star field. "These are planets," she explained. "Rogue planets." There was a star collision, 50 light-years away. It knocked these worlds out of their orbit. Now they're heading straight for us. Veltar felt his blood turn cold. "How long do we have?" 72 hours until impact. "Maybe less." "Doctor." Kesta pulled up more data. "Each planet is twice the size of our world. When they hit our system, they'll destroy everything. The gravity alone will tear our planet apart." 24. Thanks for watching. 24-1. 24-1. 24-1. 24-1. 24-1. 24-1. Veltar stared at the screen. His people had no warships, no weapons. They had always depended on the Galactic Patrol for protection. The Thylorians were artists and thinkers, not fighters. "Send an emergency message to the Galactic Patrol right now," he ordered. The communication officer worked quickly. Within minutes, the distress signal went out on all emergency channels. "Galactic Patrol Emergency Code Alpha Prime," the message said. "This is Kepler 442b colony requesting immediate evacuation assistance. 3 rogue planetary bodies approaching. Time to impact: 72 hours. Population: 300,000 souls. Please respond immediately." The first response came 2 hours later. It was not what Veltar hoped to hear. "Colony Kepler 442b. This is Galactic Patrol Sector Command. Your emergency request has been received and logged. The nearest patrol fleet is currently engaged in routine diplomatic exercises in the Andorian Nebula. Estimated arrival time to your location is 15 standard days." Veltar's hands shook as he read the message again. 15 days? "But the planets will hit us in 3. Another message arrived. This one was even worse. "Emergency protocols require a 48-hour verification process before any evacuation fleet can be dispatched. Please complete forms GP 7742 through GP 7891 and submit for review. A response committee will evaluate your request within the standard time frame." "Dr. Kessista looked at the forms. There were hundreds of them. Each one asked detailed questions about population counts, resource inventories, and environmental assessments. It would take days just to fill them all out. "They want us to fill out paperwork while 3 planets are about to crush us?" she asked in disbelief. Veltar slumped in his chair. This was how the Galactic Patrol worked. Everything had rules. Everything took time. The ancient civilizations that ran the patrol had been around for thousands of years. They never rushed. They believed careful planning was more important than quick action. But the Thylorians didn't have time. 6 hours away, Captain Sarah Chen of the human merchant ship Persistence was running a routine cargo delivery. Her ship carried mining equipment to colonies in the Outer Rim. It was boring work, but it paid well. Sarah was drinking coffee on the bridge when her communications officer spoke up. "Captain, I'm picking up an emergency transmission. It's pretty strong. Must be close." "Put it on speaker," Sarah said. The desperate voice of Veltar filled the bridge. Sarah listened to the whole message. When it ended, she was already moving toward the navigation console. "How far are we from Kepler 442b?" she asked her navigator. "About 6 hours at full speed, Captain." Sarah opened a secure channel to Earth Fleet Command. Within minutes, she was speaking directly to Admiral Marcus Torres of the 7th Human Expeditionary Fleet. Admiral, we just intercepted a distress call from Kepler 442b. 300,000 civilians are about to be wiped out by rogue planets. The Galactic Patrol won't get there for 2 weeks. Torres was a veteran commander. He had led human forces through 3 major conflicts since humanity joined the Galactic Confederation 50 years ago. He made decisions quickly and stuck by them. What's our position? He asked his staff. The 7th Fleet is currently conducting training exercises near Wolf 359. We could reach Kepler 442b in 8 hours if we push the jump drives hard. Torres thought for 30 seconds. That was 30 seconds longer than most humans needed, but much faster than any other species in the galaxy. Here's what we're going to do, he announced. All ships prepare for emergency, jump to Kepler 442b. We're going to help those people. His aide looked worried. Sir, we don't have authorization from Galactic Command. The Thylorians aren't even allied with Earth. If we intervene without permission, there could be serious political consequences. Torres stood up and walked to the main display screen. The 7th Fleet consisted of 12 ships and 8,000 human personnel. It wasn't the biggest fleet in space, but it was fast and well-trained. Lieutenant, I've been in command for 20 years. In all that time, I've learned one simple rule. When people are dying and you can help, you help. We'll worry about the paperwork later. The aide nodded. He had served under Torres before. The admiral always did what he thought was right, regardless of what the regulations said. Within an hour, the entire 7th Fleet was moving toward Kepler 442b at maximum speed. Their experimental jump drives could cover vast distances quickly, but it put enormous stress on the ships and crews. Back on Kepler 442b, Veltar received another message from the Galactic Patrol. They wanted additional environmental impact studies before they could approve an evacuation plan. The message was 18 pages long and full of technical language. Veltar threw his datapad across the room in frustration. Through his window, he could see the Thylorian families going about their daily lives. Children played in the crystal gardens. Artists worked on their sculptures. None of them knew that death was racing toward them from deep space. His communication officer called out suddenly, "Administrator, we're getting a new transmission. It's not from the patrol." "Who is it?" It's a human fleet, sir. They say they received our distress call. They're 6 hours away and coming to help." Veltar had heard of humans, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had. They were the newcomers who had joined the Confederation only 50 years ago. Other species called them the impatient ones because they always wanted to move fast. The older civilizations thought humans were too emotional and reckless. But right now, Veltar thought human impatience sounded perfect. "Send a response," he ordered. "Tell them we'll be very grateful for any help they can provide." As the human fleet raced through space toward Kepler 442b, Admiral Torres studied the tactical situation. 3 massive planets were going to smash into the Thylorian system in less than 3 days. The Galactic Patrol was still filling out forms, but humans had never been good at accepting the impossible. Torres smiled grimly as he watched his ships jump through space. They were about to attempt something that had never been tried before. They were going to save 300,000 lives, whether the galaxy thought it could be done or not. The race against time had begun. Space around Kepler 442b suddenly filled with bright flashes of light. One by one, 12 human ships appeared out of jump space. The Thylorian sensors went crazy detecting the new arrivals. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable. Through the main viewing screen, he could see the blue and green world where 300,000 Thylorians lived. It looked peaceful from space. But Torres knew that peace would end very soon. "Communications. Open a channel to the colony," he ordered. On Kepler 442b, Veltar rushed to the main communication center. His people gathered around him, their blue-scaled faces full of hope and fear. They had never seen human ships before. The vessels looked different from Galactic Patrol ships. They were smaller but seemed built for speed and action. "Colony Administrator, this is Admiral Marcus Torres of the Human Colonial Fleet. A strong voice said through the speakers. "We received your distress call. We're here to help. What do you need?" Veltar felt relief wash over him. These humans had crossed space to help complete strangers. The Galactic Patrol was still asking for paperwork, but humans were already here. "Admiral Torres, I am Veltar, administrator of this colony. Thank you for coming. We have 3 rogue planets heading straight for our system. They will impact in 66 hours. Our ships can only evacuate 50,000 people. The rest will die." Torres studied the data his science officer had gathered. The 3 planets were massive. Each one was twice the size of Earth. When they hit the Thylorian system, they would destroy everything. "Administrator Veltar, we've analyzed your situation. We believe there's another option besides evacuation." Veltar looked confused. "What do you mean?" "We think we can move the planets away from your system. Change their course so they miss you completely." The Thylorians in the communication center stared at each other in shock. Dr. Kesta stepped forward. "Admiral, I am Dr. Kesta, chief scientist of this colony. Moving planets is impossible. The energy required would be enormous. The Galactic Science Council has studied this problem for centuries. They calculated that planetary deflection technology won't exist for another 1,000 years. Torres smiled. Dr. Kesta could hear it in his voice even across space. "Doctor, humans have a saying. We don't become experts at something by accepting what's impossible. We become experts by making the impossible happen every day." Captain Sarah Chen, who had first heard the distress call, was now orbiting one of the approaching rogue planets in her ship Persistence. Her science officer was taking detailed measurements. "Captain, this planet is mostly iron and rock, very dense. But there are stress fractures running through the core. If we place fusion charges at exactly the right points, we might be able to break it apart, or at least change its spin." Sarah reported this to Admiral Torres. The Admiral gathered his senior staff for a quick meeting. "Here's what we're going to do," Torres explained. "We'll use our gravity tether technology to create anchor points around each planet. Our heavy cruisers will act as mobile gravity sources. We'll slow the planets down and change their direction. At the same time, we'll place fusion charges at key stress points to help break up their mass." His chief engineer looked worried. "Sir, we've never tested the gravity tethers on objects this large. The power requirements alone could burn out our main reactors. Then we'll run the reactors past their safety limits," Torres replied. "Better to risk our ships than let 300,000 people die." Back on the colony, Veltar was trying to explain the human plan to his people. Most Thylorians couldn't believe what they were hearing. "They want to grab 3 planets and move them?" asked his deputy administrator. "That's insane. Humans must be completely mad." Dr. Kesta had been studying the human technical specifications they had shared. "Actually, their gravity tether technology is quite advanced. I've never seen anything like it. And their fusion charges are much more powerful than our designs." Veltar made a decision. "Dr. Kesta, I want you to work with the human scientists. Share all our data about the planets and our system. Help them however you can." News of the human intervention began spreading across the galaxy. The Galactic Patrol headquarters received reports that humans were conducting an unauthorized military operation in Thylorian space. General Zextar of the Ethereal Collective was furious. "These humans have been part of the Confederation for barely 50 years. And already they think they can ignore all proper procedures. They should have waited for official approval." But other species were watching with interest. The news networks were calling it the impossible rescue. Some aliens thought humans were brave. Others thought they were crazy. On the human flagship, engineers worked around the clock to prepare the gravity tethers. These devices had only been tested on asteroids before. Using them on planets would push the technology far beyond its design limits. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Nakamura was the lead engineer. She had helped design the gravity tether system 5 years earlier. Now she was preparing to use it in ways she had never imagined. "The power flow has to be perfect," she explained to her team. "If we lose control of the gravity field for even a few seconds, we could tear our own ships apart. Meanwhile, Captain Sarah Chen was leading a squadron of smaller ships to plant fusion charges on the rogue planets. Landing on a moving planet was dangerous enough. Drilling into its core to place explosives was almost suicidal. Remember, she told her pilots, we need to place the charges at exactly the coordinates Dr. Kessas calculated. If we're off by even a few meters, this whole plan fails. The human ships spread out across the approaching planets like tiny insects on giant rocks. They worked quickly, knowing that every minute brought the planets closer to the Thylorian system. On Kepler 442b, Veltar watched the human ships through his telescopes. He had never seen any military force work so fast. Galactic patrol operations usually took weeks of planning. Humans seemed to make up their strategy as they went along. Why do they work so hard for us? He asked Dr. Kesta. We're not even their allies. They gain nothing by saving us. Dr. Kesta had been studying human culture while working with their scientists. I think it's simple for them. Someone needs help, so they help. They don't seem to calculate whether it's profitable or politically smart. They just see people in danger and act. A young Thylorian worker nearby overheard them. Is that why other species call them crazy? Maybe, Dr. Kesta said. But right now, I'm very glad they're crazy. Admiral Torres received a message from Galactic Patrol Command. They ordered him to cease all unauthorized operations immediately and withdraw from Thylorian space, pending a full diplomatic review. Torres deleted the message without reading it completely. Sir, his communications officer said, Galactic Command is demanding a response. Tell them we're a little busy right now, Torres replied. They can court-martial me later. Right now, we have planets to move. The first gravity tether activated around the largest rogue planet. The human heavy cruiser Defiant positioned itself at a precise distance and began generating an artificial gravity field. The massive planet started to slow down, just barely. It's working, Lieutenant Commander Nakamura shouted from the engineering deck. The planet's velocity is decreasing by 0.001% per minute. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Torres watched the tactical display as his other ships moved into position around the remaining planets. All ships, begin gravity tether operations. Remember, we only get one chance at this. Across the solar system, human ships created invisible chains of gravity that began to pull at the rogue planets. The vessels shook and groaned under the enormous strain. Warning lights flashed on every bridge as power systems pushed beyond their safe limits. But the planets were slowing down. On Kepler 442b, the entire population watched the sky. They couldn't see the human ships directly, but their instruments showed what was happening. For the first time since the crisis began, the predicted impact time was getting longer instead of shorter. Veltar stood in his crystal garden, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, 8,000 humans were risking their lives for people they had never met. Administrator Dr. Kesta called over the comm system. The human plan is working. The planets are definitely changing course. If they can maintain this for another 12 hours, we might actually survive. Veltar smiled for the first time in days. Maybe humans really could make the impossible happen. But the hardest part was still ahead. The human heavy cruiser Defiant shook violently as it maintained its gravity tether on the largest rogue planet. Captain Elena Rodriguez gripped her command chair as sparks flew from overloaded control panels. Engineering report, she shouted over the noise of straining metal. Captain, we're running the gravity generators at 120% capacity, her chief engineer called back. The power conduits are melting. We can't keep this up much longer. How much longer do we need to hold position? Admiral Torres's voice came through the comm system. All ships. Maintain current positions for another 10 hours minimum. The planets are slowing, but not fast enough yet. Rodriguez looked at her engineering displays. Red warning lights covered every screen. The Defiant was literally tearing itself apart, trying to hold a planet that weighed billions of tons. We'll hold, she announced to her crew. Whatever it takes, we'll hold. Down in the engineering sections, human technicians worked frantically to keep their ship functioning. They rerouted power, replaced burned circuits, and manually controlled systems that should have been automated. It was dangerous work, but nobody complained. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Nakamura moved between ships in a small shuttle, helping crews manage their gravity tethers. Each ship faced different problems. The cruiser Endeavour had lost 2 power generators. The destroyer Swift had a cracked hull from the gravitational stress. "This is insane," the Endeavour's captain told her. "We're trying to move objects that should be impossible to move." "Captain, humans have been doing impossible things since we climbed down from trees," Nakamura replied. "This is just Tuesday for us. On Kepler 442b, Dr. Kesta worked alongside human scientists to monitor the operation. She had never seen anything like human engineering before. Where Thylorians would spend months planning every detail, humans seemed to make up solutions as problems appeared. "Your people work very differently than ours," she told Commander Jake Martinez, the human science officer. "How so?" Martinez asked while adjusting calculations for the fusion charges. "When we encounter a problem, we study it carefully. We research all possible solutions. We build consensus among our scientists. Then we create a detailed plan." "That sounds very thorough," Martinez said. "How long does that usually take?" Several months, sometimes years for complex problems." Martinez stared at her. "Years? Dr. Kesta, we don't have years. We don't even have days. When we see a problem, we fix it right now with whatever we have available." Dr. Kessas watched Martinez modify a fusion charge design on the spot, making changes based on new data about the planet's composition. The modifications weren't perfect, but they were good enough, and they were fast. "Is this why other species think humans are reckless?" she asked. "Probably," Martinez admitted. "But being careful doesn't help much when people are about to die." Veltar visited different work sites across his colony. Human technicians were everywhere, installing temporary equipment and working with Thylorian engineers. The cultural differences were obvious. At the main power station, he found engineer first class Maria Santos arguing with a Thylorian supervisor about safety protocols. "I understand your concerns," Santos was saying, "but we need to boost power output by 30% to support the gravity tethers. Yes, it's above normal safety limits. But normal safety limits won't save your people." The Thylorian supervisor looked terrified. "But the regulations clearly state that power systems cannot operate above 105% capacity." "Sir," Santos replied patiently, "your regulations were written for normal times. This isn't normal. Sometimes you have to break the rules to do what's right." Veltar interrupted. "Follow the humans' recommendations. I'll take responsibility for any violations." As Santos began modifying the power systems, Veltar asked her, "Why do your people take such risks for strangers?" Santos paused in her work. "Administrator, let me ask you something. If you saw a child drowning in a river, would you jump in to save them, even if you might get hurt?" "Of course," Veltar replied immediately. "Well, we see 300,000 people drowning, and we're jumping in. It's the same thing, just bigger." The operation continued for hours. Human ships maintained their positions despite increasing damage. The rogue planets were definitely slowing down. But the process was putting enormous strain on everything and everyone involved. Captain Sarah Chen led the fusion charge placement teams. Her ship Persistence had landed on the surface of the second rogue planet. The gravity was much stronger than Earth normal, making every movement difficult. "Charges placed at coordinates 7, 12, and 15, reported Sergeant Mike Thompson over the comm. "This rock is harder than anything I've ever drilled through. Keep working, Sergeant. The Admiral needs those charges in position in 4 hours." Thompson and his team were using portable fusion drills designed for asteroid mining. They had never been tested on planetary surfaces. Several drills had already broken under the stress. "Ma'am, we're running out of equipment," Thompson reported. "These drills weren't made for this kind of work." Chen thought quickly. "Strip the backup drills from all non-essential systems. We'll worry about regulations later." Meanwhile, on the human flagship, Admiral Torres received another angry message from Galactic Patrol Command. This one threatened him with arrest for unauthorized deployment of military assets and violation of Confederation sovereignty laws. Torres forwarded the message to his legal officer without reading it completely. "Sir, they're demanding an immediate response," his communications officer said. "Tell them I'm busy moving planets," Torres replied. "If they want to arrest me, they can wait in line behind the laws of physics." The gravity tether operation was reaching its critical phase. All 12 human ships were now connected to the 3 rogue planets by invisible chains of artificial gravity. The planets were slowing down, but barely fast enough. Dr. Kesta ran new calculations every hour. "Admiral Torres, at current deceleration rates, the planets will miss our system by approximately 50,000 kilometers. That's cutting it very close." "Doctor, close only matters with grenades and gravity. 50,000 kilometers is a complete miss, as far as I'm concerned." But the human ships were paying a heavy price. The destroyer Swift had lost main power completely and was running on emergency batteries. The cruiser Steadfast had hull breaches on 3 decks. Every ship reported major system failures. "All ships, status report," Torres requested. One by one, his captains responded. "Defiant here. Gravity generators at critical temperature, but still holding." Endeavor reporting. "We've lost artificial gravity on half the ship, but the tethers are stable." Persistence calling in. "Fusion charge team is behind schedule, but they're making progress." Torres listened to the reports. His fleet was being pushed beyond all reasonable limits. Any other military force would have withdrawn by now, to prevent permanent damage to their ships. But Torres looked at the tactical display showing Kepler 442b, with its 300,000 inhabitants. Withdraw was not an option. "All ships, maintain current operations. We're not leaving until this job is finished." On the colony's surface, young Thylorians watched human technicians work. The humans moved with constant urgency, as if every second mattered. They modified equipment on the spot, took calculated risks, and never seemed to rest. "Why do they care so much about us?" a Thylorian child asked her teacher. The teacher had been listening to human communications all day. "I think for them, it's very simple. They see people in trouble, so they help. It doesn't matter if those people are human or Thylorian or something else entirely." Veltar stood in his command center, watching the displays that showed the rogue planets slowly changing course. The human plan was working, but barely. The margin for error was tiny. "Administrator," his communications officer called. "We're receiving a message from the Galactic Patrol. 3 of their ships have finally arrived in our system." Veltar felt hope. More help would be welcome. But when he read the patrol's message, his hope turned to shock. "Human fleet, this is Galactic Patrol Squadron 7. You are ordered to cease all unauthorized operations immediately and withdraw from Thylorian space. You are in violation of 17 different Confederation regulations." Admiral Torres's response came quickly. "Patrol Squadron 7. We are currently preventing the extinction of 300,000 civilians. You can arrest me after we finish saving them. Human fleet, you will comply immediately or face criminal charges." Torres's voice carried a tone that made even the Thylorians smile. "Patrol ships, you're welcome to help us move these planets. Otherwise, stay out of our way." Dr. Kesista looked at Veltar with amazement. "He just told the Galactic Patrol to shut up so he could finish saving us." Veltar nodded slowly. "Dr. Kesta, I'm beginning to understand why the galaxy calls humans unpredictable. They don't care about politics or regulations, or proper procedures. They only care about doing what's right." The next few hours would determine whether human determination was enough to defeat the laws of physics. 3 massive planets continued their deadly approach, while 12 human ships strained against forces that could crush entire worlds. But the humans weren't giving up. They never gave up. 12 hours remained until the moment of truth. The fusion charges had to detonate at exactly the right time, in exactly the right sequence. If the timing was off by even seconds, the plan would fail completely. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the heavy cruiser Defiant as her ship continued to hold its gravity tether on the largest rogue planet. Warning alarms had been blaring for hours. Half her control panels were dark, and the smell of burning circuits filled the air. "Captain, hull stress is at critical levels," her chief engineer reported. "The gravity tether is literally pulling our ship apart." Rodriguez looked at the tactical display. The planet was so close now that it filled most of the screen. Billions of tons of rock and metal, held by nothing but human technology and determination. "How long can we hold?" "Maybe 30 minutes, Captain. After that, we'll lose structural integrity completely." Rodriguez opened a channel to Admiral Torres. "Admiral, Defiant here. We're at our absolute limit. I don't know if we can maintain position until detonation time." Torres's voice came back steady and calm. "Captain, I need you to hold for 45 more minutes. That's when we trigger the fusion charges. Can you do it?" Rodriguez looked around her bridge. Her crew was exhausted. The ship was falling apart. But 300,000 Thylorians were counting on them. "We'll hold, sir. Whatever it takes." She closed the channel and turned to her crew. "You heard the Admiral. 45 minutes. Let's see what this old ship is really made of." On Kepler 442b, Veltar stood in his crystal garden watching the sky. The 3 rogue planets were visible now, as tiny dots of light moving against the stars. In a few hours, those dots would either pass harmlessly by or destroy everything he had ever known. Dr. Kesta joined him in the garden. "The human calculations show a 93% chance of success. The planets will miss us by approximately 40,000 kilometers. And the other 7%? Veltar asked. "Complete annihilation of our system," she replied quietly. They stood in silence for a moment. Around them, Thylorian families were gathered in public spaces, watching news broadcasts about the human rescue operation. Some sang traditional songs of hope, others simply held each other close. "Dr. Kesta, what have we learned about humans during this crisis?" She thought carefully before answering. "They don't calculate acceptable losses like we do. For them, losing even one person is unacceptable. They'll risk everything to save everyone." On the human flagship, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Nakamura was coordinating the final phase of the operation. Every fusion charge had to detonate within a 3-second window. The gravity tethers had to release at precisely the right moment. And all of this had to happen while the ships were being torn apart by gravitational forces. "All fusion teams. Final status report," she called over the comm system. "Team Alpha, charges armed and ready. Team Beta, charges in position. Team Gamma." Static filled the channel. Team Gamma was on the most unstable rogue planet, the one that was spinning unpredictably. "Team Gamma, please respond." Captain Sarah Chen's voice came through weakly. "Nakamura, this is Chen. We've had some problems. The planet's rotation shifted our drilling site. We're going to have to place the charges manually." Nakamura felt cold. Manual placement meant someone would have to stay on the planet's surface during detonation. They would never escape in time. "Sarah, find another way. We don't leave people behind. There is no other way. If these charges aren't placed exactly right, the planet will continue toward the colony. I won't let that happen." Admiral Torres had been listening to the exchange. "Captain Chen, this is a direct order. Get your people off that planet now." "Sir, with all respect, I can't do that. My team volunteered for this mission. We knew the risks." Torres stared at the tactical display. Chen was right. Without those charges, the 3rd planet would continue on course toward the Thylorian system. The other 2 planets would miss, but one impact was enough to kill everyone. "Sarah," he said softly, "there has to be another option. Admiral, there are 300,000 people down there who just want to live. My team of 12 can save them." The math is pretty simple. Before Torres could respond, Chen cut the communication link. On the surface of the spinning rogue planet, Captain Chen gathered her team. Sergeant Thompson and 11 other volunteers had been working for hours to position the fusion charges. "Listen up," Chen told them. "These charges have to detonate in 17 minutes. The explosion will crack this planet like an egg. Anyone still on the surface won't survive." "Ma'am," Thompson said, "we all knew this was a one-way trip. When we volunteered, Let's finish the job. The team split up to place the final charges. They worked quickly but carefully. One mistake would doom the entire operation. Meanwhile, the gravity tether holding the largest planet finally reached its breaking point. On the Defiant, Captain Rodriguez watched her engineering displays turn red, then black, then simply fail completely. "All hands, brace for impact," she shouted. The massive ship twisted and buckled as gravitational forces tore through its hull. But the tether held for just a few more seconds. Just long enough. "All ships, prepare for fusion detonation," Admiral Torres announced. 3, 2, 1. Now, across the 3 rogue planets, hundreds of fusion charges detonated simultaneously. The explosions were visible from Kepler 442b as brilliant flashes of light that briefly outshone the system's twin suns. The largest planet split into 3 pieces that tumbled away from each other. The second planet developed massive cracks that changed its center of gravity, sending it spinning off course. The third planet, where Chen and her team had placed the final charges, simply disintegrated into millions of smaller chunks. On Kepler 442b, every Thylorian watched the sky as the death sentence that had been racing toward them turned into a spectacular fireworks display. Chunks of rock and metal scattered in all directions, but none of them were large enough to threaten the colony. "Impact probability now 0%, Dr. Kesta announced to the cheering crowd. "The planets will pass us completely." Veltar felt tears running down his scaled cheeks. The humans did it. They actually moved 3 planets, but the celebration was mixed with sorrow. 12 humans had died to save 300,000 Thylorians. Captain Chen and her team were gone, vaporized in the fusion explosions that had cracked a world. Admiral Torres stood alone on his bridge, looking at the debris field that had once been 3 rogue planets. His fleet was scattered and damaged. The Defiant was barely holding together. But they had succeeded. "Admiral," his communications officer called. "We're getting a transmission from the Galactic patrol ships." "Put it through." The voice of the patrol commander was formal and cold. "Human fleet, you are under arrest for violation of Confederation space law, unauthorized military deployment, and destruction of planetary bodies without proper environmental permits." Torres almost smiled. "Commander, we just saved 300,000 lives. You can arrest me if it makes you feel better." "Admiral Torres, these violations are serious. You will surrender your command immediately." "I'll surrender my command when someone explains to the families on Kepler 442b why following regulations was more important than saving their lives." Before the patrol commander could respond, hundreds of new signals flooded the communication channels. Thylorian civilians were broadcasting messages directly to the human fleet. "Thank you, humans, for saving our children. The humans risk everything for strangers. They are true heroes. Humanity showed us what real courage looks like." The messages continued for hours. 300,000 Thylorians wanted to thank the humans who had given them their lives back. Dr. Kesses sent a special message to Admiral Torres. "Admiral, your people have shown us something we never understood before. You don't just help because it's profitable or politically smart. You help because someone needs help. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." On other worlds across the galaxy, the news of the human rescue spread quickly. Some species praised human courage. Others criticized human recklessness. But everyone was talking about the impossible thing that humans had just accomplished. The Zeltharian Empire issued a formal complaint about human disregard for proper procedures. The Ethereal Collective demanded an investigation into unauthorized planetary modification. 2. But 12 other species sent messages to Earth, asking if humans would provide emergency response services for their colonies too. As Admiral Torres coordinated repairs to his damaged fleet, he received a personal message from Earth Command. Instead of the court-martial he expected, he found a promotion order and a new assignment. "Admiral Torres," the message read, "you are hereby assigned to command the new Galactic Emergency Response Fleet. Your mission: provide rapid assistance to any civilization in crisis, regardless of politics or paperwork." The message was signed by the President of Earth herself. Torres looked out at the debris field one more time. Somewhere in that scattered rock and metal were the remains of 12 humans who had died as heroes. They had volunteered for a mission they knew they couldn't survive because 300,000 strangers needed them. "Captain Chen," he said quietly to the stars, "I think you'd be proud of what comes next." The impossible rescue was over. But it was only the beginning of something much larger. Humanity had just changed the way the galaxy thought about emergency response forever, and they had done it by refusing to accept that anyone had to die when help was available, even if that help came from crazy, reckless humans who didn't know when to quit. 6 months later, Veltar stood in the chambers of the Galactic Confederation Council on the capital world of Zentara Prime. The massive hall contained representatives from over 400 species, but today they were all focused on one topic: humanity's actions at Kepler 442b. Veltar wore the formal robes of a Thylorian ambassador, his blue scales polished to catch the light from the chamber's crystal dome. He had been appointed as his people's special representative to address the council about the human rescue operation. "Honored representatives," Veltar began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "6 months ago, my people faced complete extinction. 3 rogue planets were going to destroy our world and kill every one of our 300,000 citizens." The chamber was unusually quiet. Every delegation was listening carefully. "We sent a distress call to the Galactic Patrol. The response was that help would arrive in 15 days. We had 72 hours to live." Veltar paused and looked directly at the Galactic Patrol representatives. Several of them shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The humans arrived in 8 hours. They didn't ask for payment. They didn't demand political concessions. They didn't require us to sign treaties or trade agreements. They came because someone needed help. General Zextar of the Ethereal Collective stood up to interrupt. "Ambassador Veltar, while we appreciate your gratitude, the humans violated 17 major Confederation regulations. They deployed military forces without authorization. They modified planetary bodies without environmental permits. They ignored direct orders from Galactic Patrol commanders." Veltar looked at the general calmly. "General Zextar, let me ask you a simple question. How many of my people would be alive today if the humans had followed all your regulations?" "That's not the point," the general replied. "Laws and procedures exist for good reasons. The point, General, is that 300,000 Thylorians are alive because humans believe that saving lives is more important than following rules." A murmur ran through the chamber. The Thylorian delegation wasn't alone. 12 other species had requested emergency response assistance from humanity in the past 6 months. Every request had been answered quickly and effectively. Admiral Torres sat in the witness section, wearing his dress uniform. The court-martial proceedings against him had been quietly dropped when public opinion across the galaxy turned overwhelmingly in favor of the human rescue. Instead, he now commanded the new Galactic Emergency Response Fleet, with ships from 7 different species under his command. The Chief Magistrate called the session to order. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Veltar of the Thylorian Republic." Veltar moved to the central speaking platform. "Honored representatives, I come before you today not to criticize the Galactic Patrol, but to propose a new way of thinking about emergency response." He activated a holographic display showing the Kepler 442 system before and after the human intervention. "This is what our system looked like 6 months ago, with 3 massive planets approaching our world. This is what it looks like now." The display showed the scattered debris field and 3 new asteroid belts that would provide valuable mining resources for generations. "The humans didn't just save our lives, they turned a disaster into an opportunity. They showed us that quick action can achieve things that careful planning never could." Dr. Kesta, now serving as the Thylorian Minister of Science, joined Veltar at the platform. "The human gravity tether technology has revolutionized our understanding of large-scale engineering," she reported. 17 different species have requested access to their research. The applications go far beyond emergency response. She brought up technical data on the hologram. "With human methods, we can now move asteroids to create mining stations. We can adjust the orbits of planets to improve climate conditions. We can prevent natural disasters that would have been impossible to stop before." The Zeltharian representative stood up. These technologies are dangerous in the wrong hands. What prevents humans from using their gravity tethers as weapons? Admiral Torres was given permission to address the council. Honored Representative, Torres said, humans have had nuclear weapons for over 400 years. We've had antimatter technology for 200 years. We've never used these technologies to threaten other species. We use them to help. He gestured toward the Thylorian delegation. 6 months ago, we could have demanded anything from the Thylorians in exchange for our help. Territory, resources, political alliances. Instead, we asked for nothing except the chance to save lives. The debate continued for hours. Some species praised human methods. Others worried about human unpredictability. But the facts were hard to argue with. In 6 months, human emergency response teams had prevented 4 mining disasters, stopped 2 asteroid impacts, and rescued civilians from 3 different natural disasters. Every operation had been successful. Every operation had been completed faster than traditional galactic patrol methods could have managed. During a break in the proceedings, Veltar found Admiral Torres in a quiet corridor outside the main chamber. Admiral, how is Captain Chen's family doing? Veltar asked. Torres smiled sadly. Her parents are proud of her. Her sister joined the emergency response fleet last month. She says she wants to follow Sarah's example. On my world, we've built a memorial to the 12 humans who died saving us. Children learn their names in school. They're considered heroes by our entire species. Captain Chen would have liked that, Torres replied. She always said the best way to honor the dead was to keep helping the living. The council reconvened for the final vote. The issue before them was simple. Should humanity's emergency response methods be adopted as standard procedure for the entire Galactic Confederation? The Thylorian delegation voted yes, of course. But they weren't alone. The vote was 847 inches favor, 34 against, with 12 abstentions. Chief Magistrate Theron announced the result. The Galactic Confederation hereby adopts the Kepler Emergency Response Protocol, also known as the Human Method. Emergency assistance will be provided immediately to any civilization in crisis, with authorization procedures to follow rather than precede action. The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives were already asking how quickly human emergency response teams could be deployed to their systems, but the biggest change came from the Galactic Patrol itself. General Morak of the Patrol Command approached Admiral Torres after the vote. Admiral, my organization has been providing emergency services for over 2,000 years. We've always prided ourselves on careful planning and thorough preparation. But in all that time, we've never saved 300,000 lives in a single operation. Torres nodded respectfully. General, you've prevented countless disasters through good planning. There's value in that approach too, perhaps, but I think it's time for the patrol to learn from human methods. Would you be willing to train our officers in rapid response techniques? I'd be honored, General. 1 year later, emergency response across the galaxy had completely changed. The average response time to crisis calls had dropped from weeks to hours. Casualty rates in natural disasters had fallen by over 80%. 17 species had established their own rapid response fleets based on human designs. The Thylorian system had become a major hub for emergency response training. The 3 former rogue planets, now broken into manageable asteroid belts, provided resources for the construction of emergency supply stations throughout the sector. Veltar, now serving as the Galactic Confederation's Special Coordinator for Emergency Response, received a priority message while working in his office on Kepler 442b. A star was going nova in the Rigel system. 12 billion people needed evacuation immediately. He opened a communication channel to the emergency response fleet. Admiral Torres, this is Veltar. We have a nova situation in Rigel. How quickly can you respond? Torres's voice came back immediately. Veltar, the fleet can be there in 4 hours, but this is a big one. We'll need everything we've got. You'll have it. I'm authorizing Emergency Protocol Alpha. All available ships. All species. All resources. Whatever you need. Thanks, old friend. We'll bring them home. As Veltar watched through his office window, ships from 7 different species began jumping toward the Rigel system. Human vessels led the formation, but they were followed by Thylorian rescue ships, Zeltharian hospital vessels, and even modified galactic patrol cruisers. The galaxy had learned an important lesson from that day 6 months ago, when 3 planets almost destroyed a peaceful world. Sometimes the right thing to do was also the impossible thing to do. And sometimes, if you refused to accept that something was impossible, you could make it possible after all. Dr. Kesses joined Veltar at the window, watching the rescue fleet disappear into jump space. "Do you think they'll succeed?" she asked. Veltar smiled. "Dr. Kesta, they're humans leading the operation. They don't know how to fail." In the distance, the crystal gardens of Kepler 442b sang their evening songs. 300,000 voices joined the harmony, grateful to be alive in a galaxy where someone always answered the call for help, even when that someone was a species of crazy, reckless, wonderful beings who thought saving lives was more important than following rules. Especially then, the memorial to Captain Chen and her team stood at the center of the colony, bearing a simple inscription in both Thylorian and human languages. They heard strangers calling for help, so they came running. "The greatest honor is to be remembered for the lives you saved." And across the galaxy, that memorial's message was spreading. When people called for help, someone would come running. Because that's what you did. Because someone needed help, so you helped. It was that simple. It was that human.